going to do some demonstration, move away from the slides, but the slides give you an outline. Anybody who's on our call today, if you want to practice with PowerApps, please get in touch, and would like to see if we could support each other with that getting started. I'll put my email in here. I'm not asking everyone to share theirs, but if you'd like to contact me, ytbrn.org, you could send a message to info@ytbrn.org. What I found is that once you get started with using PowerApps and you have someone to talk to and brainstorm with and watch some videos, you can start doing some things. And my hope is that by the end of our short session here, that you will feel empowered, if you will, to try a little bit. And it's pretty exciting when you see something start to work. Okay, so PowerApps, it's a tool for building mobile apps using expressions, components, properties, screens, buttons, and so forth, but without having to do coding or software programming for the most part. There's a couple of links at the bottom there for getting started and giving an overview, and I'll share some other resources as we go along. And I could say I also put my email address on the home screen, or on the first slide there. Okay, so PowerApps is part of Microsoft Power Platform. Power Platform has at least 4 applications or tools. PowerApps, which we're talking about today, Power BI, which is a visualization platform, Power Automate, it's for automating tasks like sending messages. If someone adds a file somewhere and you wanted someone else to be notified, or Power Automate is a platform for setting up alerts and reminders and forwarding things. It does quite a bit more than that. Power Virtual Agents are those tools that you might see on some websites that pop up that say, how can I help you? Do you have a question? Chatbots. In the lower part are some links to stories of organizations that are using PowerApps. I've tried to focus a little bit more on the nonprofit world, so as you can look through that. Let's go to the next page. I'm going to show you how I work with PowerApps, and you're going to see a version of this. This is PowerApps Studio within Microsoft Teams. So if I'm referring to apps or Microsoft tools that you're not familiar with, please interrupt me or put something in the chat if you want more explanation on that. Nonprofit organizations are eligible through TechSoup to get 10 free licenses of Microsoft 365. And that includes, I think, over 20 apps. It's Outlook, it's PowerPoint, it's Excel, it's Power BI, it's PowerApps, Power Automate, OneDrive, Teams, and several others. And what Microsoft does a pretty nice job with is providing good interoperability across these tools, and it can become even more useful to an organization to work with them in combinations. So this is I'm going to leave this for you as a reference. I'm going to point out different things as I'm going through some of the Power App that I'm going to show you that I worked on. Okay, so the example that I'm going to take you through uses a form developed by medical staff at a hospital in Massachusetts called the Craft Interview. And it's a tool that's used by organizations and their staff who work with youth to screen for substance use involvement. And so you could see that it's a relatively simple and straightforward and hopefully clear form. The top part is asking for numbers of how many times did you or not use any of those substances. And then the lower part is the impact on your life, your experience. Were people driving? Is your family noticing it? So one of the organizations that I do a little bit of work with in New Jersey uses this screening tool, and they asked me to put together a Power App so that their staff could use the Power App in the community when they're interviewing a youth rather than recording the information on a paper form. So this has turned out to be useful for them. So this next slide here shows you the screens on the Power App that I created. And I'm going to go through it a little more detail, but it's a relatively simple app that has the three foundation screens that many apps have. These are called canvas apps because we're creating them on a blank slate or a canvas. So the three are the one in the lower left, that's called a browse screen. The middle one, which is called a detail screen, and the one in the upper right, which is called an edit screen, or actually, I'm sorry, the middle one is the edit screen. The one in the upper is the detail screen after you save the edit. And these two other ones I put in as a startup or home screen, and the one down here is a report screen. And of course, you could develop the apps however you like to put as much or as little detail or richness in. I'm just showing that on here, you can change colors, you can annotate it, you can put background images, logos, and so forth. Okay, so let's take a little closer look. This is an example of the three screen app, and here I'm showing them in the sequence of the three screens, a browse screen, a detail screen, and an edit screen. These other two I simply added to make a little bit nicer package for them. And so on the browse screen, this is all fictitious information or just practice sample data. None of these refer to actual people. I'm using my dog, Lucy, as the example here. She's a beagle, so she helps me out sometime when I need me to include a character in what I'm talking about. And so on the browse screen here, it's giving some high-level information about the screening interview that took place. And if I'm clicking on this right pointing arrow, that brings me into the detail where I see much more information. And so what's written here as the three, that's the total of the values in this part of the app. So that's why the three is being shown there. And the total of this is called the part B section, the number of yeses, which are where it's on, there's four of them, and that's what's shown there. And here you can see on the detail screen what the questions were that I took from the craft form. And then if I were to click on this pencil here, that could bring me into the edit if I needed to correct anything or change anything. And then over here, I put in a visual to show what the cumulative values were for part A, the three subparts in part A. just to show that's possible. And here you have your back arrow, which takes you here. You check, brings you back here, back arrow goes here, and you can jump back to the home screen or this Power BI chart from the browse screen. In order to build an app, you need to connect to a data source. The data source could be populated, or it could simply be the columns in a spreadsheet or a table. What I'm showing here on this slide are a few different PowerApps data sources that I work with most of the time. And I like working with SharePoint lists. I'm going to show you the actual list. Here's a screen image of part of the SharePoint list. This information could also be contained in an Excel spreadsheet. And so here you see the information that's here is actually exported to this Excel spreadsheet. You could certainly start directly from an Excel spreadsheet. If you use Microsoft Teams has a connection to a data collection area within the Microsoft ecosystem called Dataverse. And if you're in developing a Power App from within the Teams interface, you can work with a Dataverse for Teams. And the Dataverse for Teams has the appearance of something like a data sheet. It looks a little bit like a SharePoint list. And if I were to open up the spreadsheet, of course, that has that same row and column display. You can also access built-in templates within Power Apps or within Power Apps for Teams. And some of them might be fairly close to things that you're interested in, so that for an app that you would like to have for your work, and so you can learn from them or maybe copy them and modify them. The next slide is a set of resources that I've learned from. These ones in the middle, I've taken training from Shane Young. I've followed his examples. He's a world expert in Power Apps, as well as Rory Neary. And Rory's actually created a Power Apps for Kids training. Lisa Crosby and April Dunham are fantastic with how they explain Power Apps. These individuals are Microsoft MVPs. They have been working with Power Apps for several years, completed the certifications in Power Apps, and they do a marvelous job of explaining and Power Apps, breaking it down and taking you through examples and tutorials. Power Apps uses some formulas, as if you're acquainted with using spreadsheets or Power BI, they also have their formula language. The formula language for Power Apps is called PowerFX. And here are 3 references for working with formulas: an overview of PowerFX and a reference. Some other links to YouTube videos, Power Apps for Nonprofits, beginner tutorial, and other ways to learn Power Apps. Okay, so let me show you a little bit about how I work with it now that we've gone through that overview. Okay, so a question came in. Let me respond on, do you recommend Excel over SharePoint or Dataverse for Teams? Which is the most stable? Shane Young, I took a week-long intensive training from Shane Young in January, and his message is that Dataverse is the best, most stable, I guess he would say the preferred and recommended data container for working with PowerApps, Power BI, or anything within the Microsoft family of tools that needs to connect to data. Now, let me put that in perspective. I'm starting to get more familiar with Dataverse for Teams. And the important thing to understand is that Dataverse for Teams is a scaled down version of Dataverse. So you might call it Dataverse Lite. If it allows you to do what you want, I'm not concerned with whether it's a limited version of Dataverse or not. It's worthwhile using. My opinion in working with, I've been working with the Microsoft's platform, like the Office 365 cloud platform, for about 10 years. I avoid using Excel unless it's absolutely necessary. And I acknowledge and recognize that other people have strong opinions otherwise. So I don't dispute anyone about using Excel. I like using SharePoint lists a lot. I have the most experience across Excel, SharePoint, and Dataverse for Teams with SharePoint lists within SharePoint Online, within Microsoft 365. I love SharePoint. And I like having my data in SharePoint. It's super easy, in my estimation, to connect to SharePoint lists with Power BI, with PowerApps. And with SharePoint lists, I feel like it's, if you're collaborating with other people, I just find that it's easier to coordinate. One of the trainers, I think it was maybe Lisa Crosby, was saying one of the nice things about Dataverse for Teams is that you really can't get lost. You don't have to suggest that people look in different folders or go to a different area. It's all there. That's the nice thing about Dataverse for Teams, is that everything is within the umbrella or envelope of Teams. Okay, so let me show you a little bit on that. I'm going to bring over some tabs here. This one I'm not going to spend too much time on. This is where I have the Excel spreadsheet. Okay, let me bring this other one over. This is like when I first tried this, I just started smiling because it was like magic. All right, so this is a SharePoint list. It's very simple. Does anyone have any questions on SharePoint lists, or are they totally new, or do you have a little bit of familiarity with them? They're basically data sheets here. I can add a new item right in there. They're very easy to create. It's very doable. I shy away from saying something's very easy because I recognize, especially for myself, that if you don't know how to do it, it's not that easy. But once you know how to do it, it's not that big a deal. And the learning curve to use a basic SharePoint list is modest. It's within a few minutes. Now, here's the thing that was like magic the first time I did it. Up across the top here, you have this tab for integrate. You can send this to Power BI. So I know Stephen K out in Uganda's been talking with me about. So Stephen, when you have an opportunity, try that. That's amazing what that does. Power Automate, we're not going to talk about that too much, but I'll just refer to it that if an item is added, or if you need approval, or if a supervisor needs to see it, or if something, the value is above a threshold and you want someone to be alerted, that's what you could use Power Automate for. Okay, so Power Apps. You can create an app, you can customize a form. So you see when I'm adding here, this is the built-in form, and it looks fine. I use this most of the time. It gets the job done. It's not very fancy. It doesn't have like color. It doesn't have things laid out in a different way. And if that's important and helpful for the intuitive navigation, you can change the form with Power Apps. Okay, I don't do that a lot. I work within Power Apps. So here's what happens. Here's how SharePoint can drive the creation of a 3-screen Power App. Okay, so I'm going to give it a name and call it 3-screen test app. So I'm going to create it. It's bringing me into Power Apps, not Power Apps for Teams, but Power Apps outside of Teams. Both of them are fine. It's not like one's better than the other. It's just if you use Teams a lot, you might want to work directly from within Teams, and you can connect to your data from within Teams. I'm just starting at the SharePoint. Okay, so here's the 3-screen app. Okay, screen number 1 is the browse screen right there. Screen number 2 is a detail screen, and screen number 3 is an edit screen. All right, now I'm going to contrast that. That's basically where I started, and here's where I ended up with the app that I showed in the slides where I showed the screens. It's the app for TechSoup. Okay, so I'm going to go into that one, and first I'll play it. This is, equivalent to how you would use it, and you can use it on your smartphone. It could be Android, iOS. You could use it on a tablet. Again, Android, Windows, iPad, iPhone. This is what I created as the home screen, and I'm using a Power BI measure and tile to tell me how many interviews have I completed so far. Okay, it's 20. And then this is a button. I'm using the logo from the Craft website. I simply downloaded it and put it in, what's that, wallpaper mode or tile mode to fill the background. And then I put the logo for my organization here. And of course, you can design or use it however you like. So this is an active button. I'm going to click on that, and that takes me into the browse. And again, it's up to you how you want it designed. I put a button here to take me back to the home screen. I put a button down here to take me to the Power BI tile visual. Okay, I'm going to go back. Okay, brings me back here. If I need to refresh the data, if I want to sort the data, I can click it here, and you can see it does a reverse sort based on name. Now, as you can clearly see, I just made these forms of or labels for identifying the different individuals. So I could show you if I wanted to see those individuals who are in the southern region, or again, however you want to use this, you can make separate columns for location, town, city, anything you like. And so that gives you the ability to do that. So that's a search, that's a formula. This is a sort, that is also a formula. And here I can add a new one. All right. So this is the new entry during meeting. All right. And I'm just going to put some numbers in here. I'm not taking, I see that I misspelled something here. That should be past, PAST. So we'll go and we'll correct that. So I'm just going to just randomly put some numbers here. And Valerie, let's see, I'm going to put a link in the chat. And Valerie, if you would help me by going to the YTB links and copying the link to the event 2 days from now.
No problem.
Okay, and that we're having an event that anyone is welcome to join if they're available and have time. It's from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Yeah.
I have a suggestion for the app. So
Yeah.
you know where it says yes, if yes is greater than 1 at the bottom? Maybe change that to if yes is greater than or equal to 1.
This one, according to the form, if we bring the form back up, because I was wondering about exactly that. And what they say is if two or more yeses. So I was going to put greater than or equal to 2. It's whatever intuitively makes sense. And maybe I should, again, this is, yeah. So you could put greater than or equal to 2 or simply greater than 1, whatever would make sense to the people working with it. Or if you need to strictly adhere to the design of the form because it's coming from medical staff, then you could do that. Val, were you able to find that link on the?
Yes, I'm just copying it now. Do you want to?
Just paste that in the chat.
No,
and that is the registration for an event connected with how we're using this app. Not literally this app that I'm showing you, but oh, I forgot about that. Yeah, let me see if I forgot, Val, that it comes out like that. I think I can remember the short form, and it's you can recover. Got it. You can recover. So I just put that in tinyurl.com. You can recover. And I'm sharing that on here. So we're running an event for youth and families to share, and anyone could come who's interested, to share information on trends in substance use within communities. I'm learning about something called Delta 8, which I had no idea what that was, but I'm learning a little bit about that. So if you want to, you can register to join us. And this is the organization that I developed the Power App for. So my organization and this organization, Tri-County Care Management Organization, are co-sponsoring this event, which has 2 guest speakers, Officer Jermaine Galloway and Rock and Roll Hall of Fame guitarist, who is also a recovery troubadour, Ricky Bird, and they're both working with us Wednesday evening, 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Okay, back to the app here. So Cora, remind me, we got to correct the spelling here. Okay, and I'm just going to randomly click off a few of these buttons here, and I'm going to save it. And you see it comes in here. If I want to review it again, if I said, oh, I jammed in the name too much. So either I have to change the form. I'm just going to shorten that, see if it fits a little better. Okay. And of course, you can adjust the sizes, the fonts, and so forth. All right. So let's see, how does it work? I'm working with the app as an end user would be working with the app. Now you see this didn't update because the Power BI doesn't update instantaneously. It's every hour, but you can upgrade your service so that you get near real-time updates. Okay, so I'm going to go back here and edit. I was in the play. Now I'm going to edit. A couple of other things that you can see here is I can add it to a team within Microsoft Teams if that is relevant to the project or work I'm doing. And so that's good. That's different than constructing the app from within Teams. So in other words, if I add it to Teams, I'm adding the play version of the app to Teams. If I want to edit it in Teams, my choice is either to create the app within Teams, or some of the expert trainers explain how you can migrate if you started it in PowerApps and you want it to reside as an editable app within Teams. So that's possible. All right, but I'm going to go into edit for this app. And so Cora, let's take care of my spelling mistake. All right, so it says I already have it open. I'm not sure where, let's see, I'm going to close that one. I generally get a little uncomfortable when I hear that, when I see this, because I want to make sure I didn't. So let me just close. I'm going to cancel that. I'm going to close out here. All right. And I'm going to close that one. And I think that's the only, I'm just going to go back to see if I have it open in some other. Oh, yeah, I do. I have it open in another browser. Yep. Okay. So I'm just going to bring this over to show you what happened. So I have it open here. So I'm going to continue working on this one here. So that warning is helpful so that you don't overwrite something that usually I don't have it open in too many different apps. There's no way I could keep track of what I was doing, but I had this open and then I opened it again. So that's why I got the warning. All right, so here's my home screen. Here's my main screen. And in the looking for, that's my chart screen. And you can put these in any order that you like. If you want to have the three core screens together, you can do that. You can click on the ellipsis here. You can move them up or down. And you can rename them to be maybe more intuitive to how you want to refer to them. All right, so I'm in the edit screen here, and here's where I need to make that correction in here. And you can see that once I clicked in here, some things changed on my work area. The center area is the canvas. I've got the tree view over here. I'm in data card key 10. So those are automatically labeled. If I really needed to have a good way of referencing certain parts of the app, I might want to, or I might decide to rename them so that it's intuitive to me, because I'm simply not capable of recalling that's data card key 10. And this one down here is data card key 14. Now, if I constructed them all in sequence, they might numerically follow a progression. That's logical, but if I took some other path, they're gonna... So there's nothing wrong with going with the default names. All right, so right here I
Sorry,
selected.
Jerome.
Yeah, hi Audrey. Okay, should the blue line saying if part A be directly below the yellow part A line on the edit screen? So here's why I put it here. And of course, I'm referring back to this part here. So the way they designed it on the form for the craft interview, they ask the three questions, and then they want you to ask the first question only, or you definitely ask the first question in part B, but then you stop if you entered zeros here. This was just a choice I made. If there's something other than zeros here, you go through all of them. Yeah, and that's the discretion of the person or the team that's working on the app as to what makes most sense to them. So I just decided to put it here so that if I'm getting distracted or juggling a lot of things, I just want to make sure I get these first three here, and then here's my check-in point. If part A was all zero, stop. If not, continue. And you can add more features and controls on here so that if it's all zeros, you can get this bottom part to simply hide. That's more advanced controls and features. Yeah. So up here, now when I click here, this is a data card. Okay, so the components are over here. You've got your screens and subparts here. And so when I click it here, that's the data card, and the data card has pieces in it. So there's the data card key, and there's this other one over here, the data card value. All right, so what I wanted to do was make an edit here, and then I can expand. This is FX, that's the formula, that's where the formulas go. And sometimes the formulas are text. And if you click down through here, that there are other options and capabilities and colors and borders. So there's just a tremendous amount of things you can do. I don't generally want to do all that. And a lot of times the defaults are fine. So I could make the correction here. Okay, or let's see, raise that up over here, click it back over here, or I could make the correction in here. I'm starting to get a little more inclined to working with the properties as opposed to up here. And you could, pull that down a little bit, pull it down a little bit more. You can change the size of your canvas image here by making it larger if you want to focus in on something, or making a little bit smaller. But let's go back in here, and I'm simply going to correct that tab out of it. And then if I want the people who are working with it to have the most current version, of course, I would save it and then publish it so they have it out there in the field. Okay, any questions? I'm going to explain some other things, but just take a check with how does this seem to people who maybe are very new to PowerApps? What do you think? Is this something that you can imagine using or being useful or working with? In my organization, I'm interested in having some of the people that I'm collaborating with to create apps for tracking some of our project activity. We also use a simple screening type of form, and maybe trying it. We could either do it on a Microsoft form, which is what we're doing, or if we want to add more screens to the experience, we could use PowerApps. Okay. So this is a little bit about let me show you something that I found tremendously useful. Let's see, and go back to the main screen here. And I'm going to open up another app to show you how I got something to work the way I wanted it. So I'm going to open up one of the earlier versions. So let's say this one that we just generated. I'm going to go into that one. Let's see, move it side by side over here. And what you'll see is the numbers that are here. I'm interested in just seeing the whole number. not all of these decimal places. Okay, so I want to make a change here. So I'm in the browse screen and I'm working within a browse gallery, and there are different designs for the gallery. And you'll see that this recommendation comes up about using the ideas tab. And I found some things very helpful in there. So let's see if it responds the way I'm hoping. So I'm going into ideas here, and it's showing me how the value is represented. But I don't want this many decimal places. I'm just working with whole numbers. So I'm going to backspace and get down to here and say, give me some ideas on how to make that happen. And it does. And this is the formula. Now, I'm not experienced enough yet with working with PowerApps to know how to construct this, but this is the PowerApps expression that I want. So I could simply click apply, and it puts it up here. It changes the formula and it puts the value in with no decimal places. Okay, so now that I have it there, I can do the same thing with the next value, and I should be able to copy it, click on the next value, and paste it, but change this if I named them consistently. And it looks like I did. And the change that I made here, you could see is applied all the way through. So this top one here, any change I make here, let's see, I'm going to, what I want to do is, I want to make these a little bit narrower. Okay, so I'm going to come up here into this first one, or let's see. Okay, I wanted to select the whole thing here, and I'm going to push it up. And as you see, as I'm doing that, it resizes everything below it in the same way. All right. Now, in the app that I ended up with, you could see I decided to put these in a row, these values. Okay, I'll just show you a few more examples before we run out of time. I'm not sure. Okay, so in this, I've got the gallery selected, but I'm actually selecting, I don't know if this is called a card or not, but I'm selecting this first one. And within the first one are components. There's this one right here. And so I don't really need to take up all that space. So I'm going to move it, make it smaller. And this one, I don't want to use all of that horizontal space.
Sorry,
So,
Jerome.
yeah.
We have another question from Stephen there. Can we read it out?
Yeah. Okay.
He's saying,
Does PowerApps have features of data field restrictions, maybe allow data and number only? The answer is yes, it does. And it can be controlled by your data source or within PowerApps. So I don't have a good example to, actually, maybe I can pull one up. So let me make a change here. So you could see I'm pulling these to reposition them, and you have to resize them in order to move them, because I've got a little bit of space there. So I'm going to move that one, make it a little bit smaller. I'm going to put it up here. And now I can move this up. Okay. Now, suppose I don't want this. I actually want dates. So I'm going to see if I could connect back to Stephen's question. So I click on Browse Gallery. I click on Properties. And you see over here, under fields, I can edit, okay? On the browse gallery, it gives you 3 options, I guess, is you're limited to that. But let's say on this one here, these are the columns within my table. And let's say I want to use modified. Okay, so I'm going to stretch this out a little bit, and that it's interpreting this as it's putting in literally the date, but you do have some ways of controlling it. Just because we're running out of time, I'm not going to go into that anymore. The last thing I'll show you is that you can change the font if you like. You can put a background color, and you can change, let's see, whoops, where was I? Let me click. All right. And you can change that. Maybe we'll make that a much lighter color. Okay, so you could do things like that. And if you just wanted the date and not the time, you can do that. All right, so we're at about our time. How about giving me some feedback on our session here? I'm going to show you actually one last thing. When you're in the edit mode and you want to test something or play it, you can click on play up here to do a preview of what, if you wanted to navigate through it, see if it was operating properly, you can do that. If you have an error, you can also press the Alt, what this is telling you, you can press the Alt key. Like here, I am not pressing the Alt key. Now I am pressing the Alt key and it should advance. So that's another way of playing the button versus editing it. This part up here is an app checker. If you have an error, it can help you figure out what the error is. This is your undo and redo. Okay, any questions before we close out? Can this be used to make a checkout kiosk main screen for an Android tablet? Yes, I believe it can. I'm going to just go back. I'm going to close out here and show you some of the, let's see, I want to create an app. You can start from a template. I think there's a service. I'm trying to see if there was one, asset checkout. So this might be, and it doesn't matter if it's Android or what it is you're checking out or what it is you're using. You can look through the templates and you might find something that is similar to what you want to create. If you could think of the logic that should go into the app, I believe you will be able to create it. And okay, so this is a bit more an involved one, but if you can explore that, and there are other apps that you can create. You can also create, for some reason, there's a slightly different collection of apps that you can use in PowerApps for Teams. The one that was a fun one is this employee ideas. And then we'll have to quit. Anything else? Could you put in some feedback in the chat? Was this useful? Did you feel like you learned some things? Would you like to participate in a learning community, or just know that there's people out there to ask questions or help? So thank you. Yeah, for your connections, you can use Excel, SharePoint, Dataverse, and here's the, yeah, here, this is one that I started, the PowerApps. This is a built-in one, and I put in submit an idea. This is a very nicely designed app that I think maybe almost any organization might find a use for, and this could be a learning group or something like that. And so and then you can submit it. So you can add images. Okay, I guess I had to fill out more of it. Now I could submit my idea. But this is, and so this one, the layout is in more of a tablet form rather than a smartphone form. But the apps will scale if you're using it on a smartphone. It will just, the layout will dynamically change. Yes, this works on a Chromebook. The PowerApps are created using a web browser. And I'm going to get that override function again, or warning maybe, if I have this open in 2 spots. But the PowerApps works within a browser environment. You can get PowerApps from the App Store, whether on Android or iPhone, iPad, and the app plays the app that you create, but the app that you download from the App Store does not create the app. It plays it. In order to create the app, you need to use a browser. Okay, here's a question. Since it is a browser app, can you put it on a website? I want to clarify something. You can put, for example, I could put a link to PowerApps on the website to launch PowerApps within another browser tab. However, then as long as you have a login and a password, you can log in and use it. So for example, I'm from here, let's see, I'm going to open PowerApps in another tab. I'm already logged in though, so this is what I would see. And if this is the app that I want to use, I can click on it and it's playing the app. So that will work perfectly well within an organization. And yes, you have to be a user with a subscription to PowerApps. That is correct. So if your organization uses Office 365, you have the license to PowerApps. You can start a free trial, but PowerApps works with business or education or nonprofit accounts. You cannot create a PowerApps account with Gmail or Yahoo or Hotmail or Outlook. There are 3 different kinds of PowerApps. What we talked about today is a PowerApps Canvas app. There's another kind of app called a model app, which is driven by data models and work processes. It's a little more structured and not as freeform as the Canvas app. I don't have as much experience with that. The example with the employee ideas, that might be a model app. The third kind is called a portal app, and I have the least experience with that. And supposedly that is designed to run in a web browser for people who may not have or who don't have the organizational accounts. But I don't know enough about that at all to talk about it in any meaningful way. The trainer who explained some of it to us said it's more difficult to work with than the others. Yeah. So if we were to go into create an app, as you look across the examples here, it tells you it's either a model-driven app, like this asset checkout one is a model-driven app. Many of the others are Canvas apps. This one is a portal app. So I'm curious to learn more about portal apps, but I have not yet learned about how they work. I'm curious about them, but I hear that they're somewhat more difficult to learn. Okay. All right, so I'm going to close out the session now. I appreciate you staying a little bit past our time. This was very interesting for me to have this session. I certainly learned a lot just preparing for it. And if any of you have questions or an interest in getting started with PowerApps and you have a question, or feel free to send me a message or try some of the resources that we worked or that are in the slides here. There's some just really outstanding resources. And I'm going to look more closely at PowerApps for Kids and to see if that's a faster learning curve for me. Our next TechSoup session that I'm running, with some help from people who are on the session today, we're going to do some simple video animation demos and talk about some tools with Video Scribe, Adobe Spark, and Canva Video. So thank you, everyone. I'm going to close out now. Thank you for joining. I hope you found something useful, and please stay connected with TechSoup Connect and join one of our future sessions if it works with your schedule. We might try some other ones in the midday time frame on the Eastern Standard Time so that people in Europe and Africa still have an opportunity to join us.